But let's turn our attention to the north of England, because we've had people complain, thinking it's London FM. I told you he was on a journey. Come with us on the journey, because right now we have landed in Manchester, and broadcaster Manchester United fan Anil Kandola joins us. How are we, Anil?
Yeah, very well. Do you know what? It's been quite nice to hear how positive you are about everything, mate. I mean, as Rory alluded to, you know, as football fans, we're always looking for the negative, but just to hear that, you know, glass is always half full, never just sometimes, is it? So yeah, it's certainly giving me a lot more positivity.
Do you adopt this? Are you like this as a football fan?
Well, before today's show, no, but absolutely now, yeah, I think so. I
have to be, because it got to the point with Spurs, I was so disillusioned that I couldn't even do my Spurs podcast last season. I couldn't do the same old Spurs podcast. Guys, I kept going, we're doing a podcast, brother, I don't want to talk about it. I'm sick of talking about the same old thing. And I was like, I'm not renewing my season ticket, whatever happens. I've renewed.
So for your sanity now, you just have to convince yourself that things are better than potentially.
Well, just like I told you, I've got a guy at the club that actually likes us.
Yes.
And that to me is something I just want to be loved, boys. I just want to be loved. Right, let's talk about Manchester United then. Where should we start? Onana should come in after De Gea's left. Let's talk about that. De Gea's gone. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, actually, I was speaking to Kevin Hatchard, the European football expert, yesterday about Onana, and do you know what? After speaking to him, I'm actually a lot more excited than I was initially. At
positive.
The end, yeah, definitely. Positive, exactly. But, you know, look, jokes aside, I think with someone like Onana, it's not just imperative that Manchester United get a new goalkeeper in, because at the end of the day, they haven't got one, obviously, with David De Gea and the ordeal that he went through. Look, and I think it's definitely worth to say that the treatment of David De Gea towards the end of his career after over a decade at Manchester United is absolutely shambolic. The fact that he got a few Instagram pictures and a nice little tweet after such a long service at the club is awful.
Was that it?
Yeah, that was it. As far as I know, unless I've missed anything, it was a couple of Instagram screenshots and just a simple thank you message.
But that could be timing, couldn't it? That could be accidental. Like at some point, maybe a testimonial will happen. He's been there for long enough, hasn't he? He can certainly qualify for a testimonial. Do you think it happens?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if it didn't, it'd be even more of a travesty than it is currently at the moment. And
we had a video of Lucas Moura crying at like the Amsterdam footage and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
He deserves something, De Gea.
Precisely. And I think, look, it's clear to see that Man United needed a new goalkeeper. Look, the way that Erik Ten Hag wants to play, which links in nicely to Andre Onana, I think he fits the bill, and then some when it comes to the way that Ten Hag wants to play out from the back. But as I said, the treatment of David De Gea is awful, but we've got to look forward. We've got to look into the positive mindset, Majestic, as you'd suggest. And I think, look, Andre Onana, I think he's firmly in there with a top name in Europe in terms of the goalkeepers. And Kevin Hatchard actually said to me that he sees no reason why in a season or two that he can't be regarded in the same breath as the likes of Ederson and Alisson, that's the one. Thanks, Rory. But yeah, so you know, it's very exciting. It's a player that's quite literally the polar opposite of David De Gea, isn't he? He's out from the back, and as we saw in the Champions League final, he's often lucky enough to even be inside his own box.
Never mind being a few heart in the mouth moments.
Absolutely,
though, isn't there?
And that's what Kevin Hatchard actually alluded to me. He said, "Look, as long as you're prepared for the odd mistake, the odd heart in mouth situation, then you'll be more than fine with someone like Andre Onana." So yeah, very excited, and hopefully a new era for Manchester United as well.
Well, in other good news, Andy, who's locked on in Manchester's happy now. He goes, "You're still in London, boys, but we're at Man United." So, big up to Andy. We were talking earlier on, Rory was talking about Joao Felix.
Yeah.
Linked with Manchester United. You're not selling it. You're not having it. You've seen him. You're there.
I just don't think the end product is there. You know, in terms of actually delivering moments that change the course of a game. I just don't think it happens enough. Is he a player you want at Manchester United?
Well, look, Rory, it's a salient point, and at the end of the day, you're a Chelsea fan. You've seen him now for the season, and what you say as a Chelsea fan has to be taken on board. But I do think, you know, managerial situations are massive when players come into clubs, and pretty much from the get-go, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing for Joao Felix to come into Chelsea with a manager who was never really under pressure. I think from moment one, Graham Potter was always looked at as someone who's on borrowed time. But, you know, Manchester United seemed to be a lot more stable compared to Chelsea when Joao Felix came in. And the one thing I would say that does almost excite me if this deal was potentially to happen is that he's a very diverse forward, isn't he? He's dynamic. He can pop up in all sorts of positions on the pitch, and he can provide in many ways rather than just the traditional striker role. And look, I think both of you made a very good point that Man United do need an out-and-out number 9, someone who is going to just bang the goals in, stay in the box almost, and just finish all the potential opportunities off. But look, with Joao Felix, it goes no ways about it. He's a massive name in Europe, and if you can get the right tune out of him, there's definitely a player there.
The problem is, when you think about players that are available to Ten Hag already, Bruno Fernandes, I think, had a brilliant season last year, masterful midfielder, and often doesn't get the credit that he deserves. So when you think about where Bruno Fernandes plays, or you think about where Marcus Rashford likes to play, is there room in your starting lineup? Is there even room in your squad for Joao Felix?
Absolutely. If you ask any Manchester United fans in terms of the squad, definitely. But it is a very interesting point that you make there in terms of the starting 11. But I'll go back to what I just said. You know, Manchester United now under Erik ten Hag are very different to the traditional way that Manchester United have been known to play in the previous years that we've seen them, obviously after Sir Alex Ferguson. He likes forwards that aren't these traditional, right, you stay on the left-hand side, you stay on the right-hand side and make sure you don't cross in each other's paths. But Erik ten Hag likes this dynamism at the top in his front forward line. So I do think he would bring something. And look, we have to always consider Manchester United's financial situation. This, as far as I know, has only been discussed as a loan deal, which obviously doesn't cost a permanent amount if Joao Felix was to come through the door. And as we saw in January, Manchester United signings, many of them tipped them to be in a title race. So what do? Bring in 2 loan players that aren't even at the club anymore. So yeah, I think when it comes down to a loan move, it's probably a lot more likely than some Manchester United fans want to believe and think.
Amrabat from Fiorentina, he's heavily linked. Is that someone that you would go all out to get?
Yeah, absolutely. Rory, we've spoke about this on this show previously, haven't we? And Sofiane Amrabat, I think he would just be a perfect signing for Manchester United. He's someone that would provide competition and keep Casemiro on his heels and not get too reluctant. Not that I think that's in his nature as it is anyway, but his passing ability, I think, goes under the radar. He can spray a ball. He's dynamic. He's a workhorse, as I've said previously. I just think that a player like this is so welcome pretty much to any side, even if they don't directly need a holding midfielder to come in. He can provide competition and he can always accept the fact, especially coming into Manchester United potentially, that he will play second string to Casemiro.
Well, this is the problem though. Like, look, I think Amrabat is a great player and I also think he deserves his big move. But with Casemiro at the club, if you're going to bring in another player to play that kind of position, surely a younger player makes more sense.
Yeah, of course. But then, you know, I do think you have to have the balance of both things here, don't you? And I think Erik ten Hag's trying to sign younger players, you know, the Rasmus Højlund links and obviously the likes of Tyrell Malacia coming in the previous summer. You know, there are obviously players in there that are youthful and one for the future. But, you know, you look at this situation now and I do, you know, draw comparisons, bear with me when I say this, to the Real Madrid situation. So obviously Modric is there, Bellingham's came in and everyone thought, right, okay, Modric is surplus to requirements. But they've kept him there for at least another season. And look how much that would provide for the likes of Bellingham.
That
the
makes
experience
sense,
that they'll provide for the newer players.
Right, that makes sense because you've got Bellingham, who is the heir apparent to the Modric throne. So there's a trajectory there. And I think Bellingham will be able to see a clear path. Amrabat, presumably, considering where he is in his career, wouldn't want to play second fiddle to Casemiro. So look, I rate Amrabat. I think he's a brilliant player. I love him at Chelsea.
It's more about the competition for Ten Hag, isn't it? Really, just to give some kind of competitive edge there for Casemiro to go, hang about, if I underperform, there's someone else that can come in. Plus, you know, with injuries and that, it's a long season.
Yeah,
the competition that Man United are going to be in.
Europe, 60 games,
what is he, 26?
Yeah, he's 26, I believe so.
So for a midfielder, that's, you know, he's in his peak. He's not too old. He's not too young. I think, again, Premier League experience with Watford. And he's played Galatasaray. He's played in so many different leagues. I think he's got a lot of experience.
Do you know why I'm trying to sort of sneer at this a bit with regard to Manchester United?
Because you want him.
Yeah, I love him. I think he's brilliant. I think he's exactly what we need.
Hands off, Rory.
You
Come on.
him.
We're looking to get him in, hopefully, anyway, at Manchester United.
Someone that he did have before, but is now with you, Mason Mount. He had his debut today. Pretty lacklustre debut, but are you still excited to see what he does?
Yeah, of course. I think you have to take it with a pinch of salt and then some when it comes to the first game of pre-season. I'd even say so for the first few games in the Premier League when the football really starts to become important. But look, it was quite funny. I was saying to Rory earlier, obviously on my Twitter feed, because I'm a Manchester United fan, there's a lot of Manchester United content on the feed, and all I was reading was how well Mason Mount was playing and, you know, how impressive this could be for Manchester United in terms of a new signing. So I thought I'd do a little bit more research. I typed in Mason Mount on the search bar where obviously all the other fans come in. I didn't see one positive comment. No. I just saw constant Mason Mount, what is this? Awful performance. But look, as I say, you don't want to get too carried away either way. Absolutely. When it comes to the pre-season. I just think, look at Martial in last season's pre-season. Everyone thought, wow, Erik ten Hag's unlocked exactly what Martial could be, and then the same old story happened. So yeah, keep a level head when it comes to Mason Mount. Wasn't the greatest performance, but I don't think it was the worst one either.
And finally, Fred and McTominay, are they on the way out, and who else joins them for you?
Yeah, I think, how long have you got, Majestic? I think there's a few players actually that could leave Manchester United, and I don't think many fans would be too upset about it. But there are a couple of situations. I'm being told that the likes of Fred, it will probably be likely with the team of Fulham, who are interested in him, £20 million, which I think is reasonable from both sides, and he would obviously be a really good addition to that side. But there are several players I've been told that are almost dragging their heels at Manchester United and quite reluctant to leave. And you can understand, obviously, from the financial point of view that, you know, if they do go elsewhere, elsewhere. They're not going to get paid the big bucks that Ed Woodward and co have been dishing out over the last few years. So, yeah, I think there will definitely be some outgoings, and I think it's imperative as well, actually. So, obviously, if Manchester United do sign 1 or 2 more players at the very maximum, if they want any other players to come in, they're going to have to sell. So, it becomes even more important than just getting rid of the deadwood in the squad. They need to raise finances and raise them quickly.
And for you next season, what's the targets?
Well, look, just by an organic process, Manchester United got 3rd place. I think they need to break into that top 2 at the very minimum. And I know it sounds a bit crazy with how good Arsenal have been and how much they've been backed. And they seem to have a really good project going on. And obviously the inevitable Manchester City finishing 1st place by 20 points is obviously there as well. But look, Manchester United are in, as I say, this process, this transitional period. But Erik ten Hag, he's achieved the goals that he set out to achieve last season by obviously winning the trophy and also finishing in the top 4. So they have to keep progressing, and they need to genuinely challenge for either the Champions League or Premier League. That doesn't mean win it, but it certainly means put your name in the hat.